let me tell you something. At this moment, I'm extremely excited for two particular games.
Super Smash Bros. Sold. Who the fuck cares about it? Devil May Cry 5 is finally happening! Just kidding guys, I do care about Smash Bros. Ultimate. But goddamn am I excited for Devil May Cry 5! Let's talk about this smooth, sexy, bald motherfucker. Hideki Kamiya, ladies and gentlemen. A video game designer, a game director, and probably the most aggressive person you'll ever meet on Twitter. Kamiya claimed that he was inspired by games such as The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Punch-Out and Castlevania, to name a few. And god, I have so much respect for this man. He was the director for Resident Evil 2, Beautiful Joe and Bayonetta, games that I really enjoy. But he's also responsible for two of my favorite games of all time, Okami and The Wonderful 101. I'll eventually get to them someday, don't worry. His career as a game developer started in 1994 when he began working for Capcom. He helped to develop the original Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1, but also went to direct Resident Evil 2, as I stated previously. In 1998, after the release of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, Kamiya was tasked by Capcom to direct Resident Evil 4. His original ideas revolved around a very stylized and cool action game, starring a man named Tony looking for answers regarding his superhuman abilities. But believing this game was straying too far from the survival horror genre, Resident Evil series producer Shinji Mikami stepped in and managed to convince Kamiya to make his own game. So Kamiya formed the Team Little Devils, rewrote the entire story, changed the name of Tony to Dante, and created what we know today as Devil May Cry.
My first exposure to the series, if I recall correctly, was when I was 10 years old. I went to a half cousin's house and he showed me this game called Devil May Cry 4. I was very captivated, you know?
The fast-paced action and the coolness of the game really caught my eye. It instantly piqued my interest and I wanted to get more involved in the DMC universe. But then I came across some major issues.
You know, I was a 10-year-old and the original trilogy was only available on PS2, a console I don't own and I have never owned it.
Fast forward to 2012 and Capcom releases the original trilogy on PS3 and Xbox 360. And in 2014 I finally got a PlayStation 3 and one of my very first picks was Devil May Cry HD Collection, which is the version I'll be reviewing for the original trilogy.
You heard that right, I'm not just going to cover the first game, I'm going for the entire trilogy as well as Devil May Cry 4. Just a heads up, I'm not planning to include the reboot because...
Soy tu cita para el baile, saco de mierda.
No, that's not it. It's just, I don't own the game and I don't want to recklessly spend money I'm saving. So, without further delay, I welcome you to the very first Game Shelf Marathon on the Devil May Cry series.
Let's rock, baby.
Devil May Cry.
2 millenniums ago, there was a war between the human and the demon world, but in the underworld, there was a demon with a strong sense of justice whose name was Sparta. He single-handedly ended the war and brought peace to the human world, earning the name of the legendary Dark Knight Sparta. The story opens up with a mysterious woman. Her name is Trish, who visits a shop named Devil May Cry. On the inside, we get to meet our hero, Dante, who gets instantly attacked by Trish. Youch! But in a matter of seconds, he easily brushes off the assault. Dante tells her that he hunts demons in search of those who killed his mother and brother 20 years ago, to which Trish responds,
It seems that way, but I'm not your enemy.
What? You literally busted into Dante's shop and stabbed him with his own sword. But whatever. Dante doesn't seem to mind that much because Trish resembles his deceased mother. She tells Dante that the Emperor of the Underworld, Mundus, is planning to return to the human world by opening a gate that connects to the Underworld. So the duo sets out to Maled Island to put an end to Mundus' plans. After this, there's not really that much of a story. Dante comes across a few bigger demons who are eventually disposed of. As for the most important plot points, there's only a handful worth mentioning. During his exploration on the castle, Dante gets occasionally assaulted by the devil Nilo Angelo, who later on is revealed to be Virgil, Dante's twin brother. It might not have much significance now, but trust me, it's gonna be very important later on. With his defeat, Dante picks up his brother's amulet that their mother gave to them and fuses it with his own. Thanks to this, Dante's sword becomes Sparta, the same blade used by his father. Eventually, Dante manages to open the gate to the underworld, but on the inside, he unsurprisingly gets betrayed by Trish, who reveals she is a demon working for Mundus. But in a twist of fate, Dante saves her life. He moves on to confront Mundus, but the latter uses Trish as bait to kill Dante. When Mundus is about to land the finishing blow, Trish returns the favor by stepping in and sacrifices herself to save Dante. Filled with rage, Dante unleashes his full power and fights Mundus in a very climactic battle. He defeats the Emperor of the Underworld and mourns the loss of the lady he just met last night. He leaves the Sparta sword and his mother's amulet next to her as he departs. During his escape from the collapsing island, Mundus comes back for a second round and... Holy shit, look at that, they made a typo! When all hope seems lost, literally out of nowhere Trish comes back. She aids Dante to land the final blow on Mundus. The duo escapes from the crumbling island on an airplane. They think about what the future might hold and fly to the horizon. In the ending, we get to see Dante's shop was renamed to Devil Never Cry, and now him and Trish work together as partners. They set out to work and the game ends.
More than enough.
Now that's a story easy to digest, it's nothing mind-blowing or spectacular, but it does its job just fine. There's still a question that constantly lingers in my mind though.
How the fuck did Trish come back to life? They never address how that happened. I thought maybe I missed a detail. Was it the amulet? The sword? The best answer you get is Dante telling her that she became human because devils never cry. But how that happened? I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking stuff. Still, I don't mind the game's basic story, it's the first one in the series, so they were testing the waters. And what we have here, I think it works very well. Here's the catch, I think that what little story we have is kept engaging, and the reason for that is Dante. Camilla's vision for a protagonist was someone who was very flashy and cool, and the result of that was Dante. I love his character a lot, I'm gonna spoil it right now, he's one of my favorite video game characters ever. But that's something I'll elaborate more in the later videos. Dante is a carefree, laid-back, full-mouthed bastard that always has a witty remark to make despite the danger, but can still get very serious if the situation demands it. He has a strong sense of justice and really values his friends and family. This easily makes him a very likable and charismatic protagonist. I love his dialogue and his voice fits him so well. Speaking of which, I actually kinda like the voice acting in this game. Dante, Trish, the demons, I think they all do a fairly decent work in delivering their lines, although it can be a little bit cheesy at times. The perfect example being...
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
But god, is the sound direction awful. It's so hard to listen to these characters when the music is just too loud. I checked the menus to see if I could find an option for subtitles, and it was there. But here's the catch, the subtitles only apply to the demons. Dante and Trish get none of that. It's just a minor inconvenience, but I think it could have been easily fixed in this collection. I was told by a friend that the current gen ports finally implemented subtitles for everyone, but I'm stuck with the PS3 version, so too bad for me. Devil May Cry has a heavy emphasis on combat. There's not too much variety in close quarter weapons, ranging only from swords to gauntlets. Most of your swords are very redundant, to be honest. Alastor is what you'll be using for the majority of your adventure, and the swords part is only useful in higher difficulties. At least there's a wider range of guns to keep a good distance from the enemies and cause constant damage. The combos are based on the timing of your presses, and while they are a little bit basic, they are very satisfying to pull off. If this scene didn't make it obvious, or this one, Dante possesses demonic blood in him, granting him access to the Devil Trigger, a special power that grants him more strength, speed, and regenerative capabilities. With all of this, the game encourages you to experiment with different ways to take down enemies because of the introduction of the stylish ranks, a system based on the player's overall performance, where the better you do and more variety you bring to the table sums up to your overall rank. This rewards you with red orbs, which are the game's main currency. You can use them to purchase items to help you in your quest, enhance Dante's overall durability, or unlock new skills for your weapons. The game has a learning curve I find very pleasant. As you delve deeper into Malay Island, you get a bigger arsenal and more red orbs. Thanks to this, you unlock new skills, increase your moveset, and acquire better means to defend yourself, but at the same time, the enemies are now more aggressive and plentiful. The game's action is mostly consistent, but there are times in which it attempts, and I stress, attempts to do something different. There's platforming in this game, it's kept to a minimal, but the thing is, Dante's not very versatile mid-air. Once that dude is up there, he ain't changing directions, and it can get a little bit troublesome at times. You'll also come across underwater sections and an airplane section. They're very clumsy to control, they don't last too long mind you, but they happen so out of nowhere and break the pace, adding nothing to the core gameplay. While the player is tasked to explore an island, the game has a fairly linear structure. It's divided in missions, and while Mallet Island is quite huge, you rarely get lost in this place. This is because at the beginning of each mission you get an image that tells you where you're supposed to go. Chances are you're already familiar with said image, or it's something you'll find next door. But the game is still very willing to reward you for doing basic exploration. You can find blue orbs scattered around the place to increase your maximum life, or do secret missions that give you the same rewards. But I do have a complaint about this. You see, the secret missions are restricted to very specific missions in the game. Doesn't sound too bad. But missing one of them is a pain because this game doesn't really have a level select option. Add that to the fact that the locations of these are extremely cryptic. There are times in which some secret missions might be too difficult for their own good. Naturally, you want to stock up on more items and try again later, but the only way to do so is to beat the game and try again in your next playthrough, with a harder difficulty by the way. And yes, the only way to play the game in higher difficulties is to beat it multiple times. Devil May Cry, for better or worse, took a lot of inspirations from the Resident Evil series, and it shows. There's a huge sense of familiarity in this atmosphere and even some direct references like the classic "You're Dead" message, but did they have to borrow the awful camera angles too? This was my most prominent issue I had with the game. The camera is more dynamic, making the backgrounds look better, and that's great! But for the most part, these camera angles are a mess. If you're exploring, the camera causes your controls to change, completely disorienting you. If you're battling, the enemies are in places where you can see them coming. It's not a game-breaking issue, but it can be a tad bit annoying at times. For an early 2000s title, I find the overall visual quality to be very appealing. You got areas like a castle, a garden, a forest, and everything is very pleasing to look at. The game knows what moods it wants to set, and it executes it very well. Battle against demons, heavy guitar music to pump up the action. Exploring the abandoned castle, nothing but eerie background instruments and the sound of your footsteps to accompany you. The character models might look a little bit ragged at times, but I think they hold up very well for today's standards, and during cutscenes and in combat they have a lot of fluidity in their movements. And the enemies never feel out of place and manage to stick out in battle. Devil May Cry isn't particularly a long game. My very first playthrough 3 years ago took me almost 6.5 hours to complete, and the playthrough done for this review only took me 4. A single mission will take you maximum 15 minutes. It's a very straightforward experience, and I don't think it has too much replay value outside of harder difficulties, secret missions you miss, or unlock extra costumes. It holds surprisingly well despite being 17 years old, but the cracks show. Visually it looks great, I already said that, but the combat now feels very simplistic and kinda bare bones compared to the games that come after this one. But seriously, what did you expect that this is the first game in the series? But at least it brings a respectable amount of variety to keep things fresh. If you look at this game for what it did and what it means to action games, you'll find a wonderful time in Devil May Cry. It's very fun to see how the series started out and see the mechanics that will later be expanded upon in future entries. It's an excellent entry point for DMC newcomers or people new to action games. The game is very accessible to get. You can get the original PS2 release for a decent price, or just go all out and get the HD trilogy available on multiple platforms. Going back to visit this game felt very good, much better than I thought it would be, and I don't feel like my time was wasted.
When I first played this game 3 years ago, it did all it had to do. It was a game solid enough to maintain my attention, and it made me want to try the rest of the series. And that's precisely what I did and what I'm gonna do again. Tune in next time, folks, because I'm giving a look to Devil May Cry 2. Does it hold a candle to the first game? Did it improve the gameplay? All of these questions will be answered in the next episode. And finally, thank you guys so much for joining in. I really hope you had an enjoyable time and you look forward for the rest of the marathon. Until then, you better stay safe and have a great day. I'll see you next time.